Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Who's down with D&D?
This whole party.
You down with D&D?
Yeah, you know me.
You down with D&D?
Yeah, you know me.
I'm down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Who's down with D&D?
This whole party.
Are you ready to get down with D&D? I know I am, and I am joined by the CEO of Down with D&D Enterprises, Sean the Mad Wizard Merwin. How are you, Sean?
I'm doing okay, Chris. How are you?
I totally changed up the intro.
I saw that. It has thrown me off, and now my whole game is going to be thrown off. But you know what? We'll pull it together here.
And the reason I say that, the CEO of Down with D&D Incorporated, or Enterprises, is because we are going to delve into the Acquisitions Incorporated book starting today. We will cover the first chapter, and over the subsequent weeks, we'll cover some more of the chapters. So are you excited about that, Sean?
I am. I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Me too. But before that, we should probably get to a few announcements, or at least news items. The first one being the Unearthed Arcana, a new Barbarian and a new Monk path.
And I think people have been waiting. We've gotten a lot of adventures, and some of the more mechanically inclined players and DMs out there are clamoring for more of the stuff that they want. So this is a push in their direction, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, you think so? Like, isn't the AI book got a bunch of mechanical stuff in it from what I've read?
It has some mechanical stuff, but not as much. You know, players are looking for Player's Handbook 2. You know, the people that I'm talking about are clamoring for new rules, new classes to play, new subclasses and so on.
By new rules, you mean new classes to play. They're looking for specific character options.
Exactly.
Yeah, because to me, the AI book gives you a lot of interesting options for play.
It does.
As far as as players too, we're going to go build our reputations in our organization and things like that.
Yep, there's definitely mechanical things in the book for people to play with, but not at the character level as much as what we're seeing here, say.
Yeah, okay. Let's delve into it then. Let's do it. So the first one is the Wild Soul Barbarian. So this is essentially a barbarian who's been exposed to the magic of the Feywild. So we're going to mix some of that primal ferocity with magic at this point, especially fairy magic.
Yes.
Do you want to just talk about? So that's the theme, right? It's all about that kind of magical mischiefy type stuff. At least that's what I thought it was going to be, but that isn't exactly what it is theme-wise as far as the abilities go. Would you, as a high level, would you agree with that?
Yeah. I think at the highest level, that is exactly what we're seeing.
Yeah. So the first ability you get is, and we'll go the first two, because the first one's just kind of flavor. It's called Lingering Magic. So the Barbarian can, a number of times per day equal to their Constitution modifier, detect magic. Mm-hmm. And the nice little flavor piece here is that the Barbarian will glow the color of the School of Magic to learn the School of Magic instead of seeing the aura around the item. I mean, they'll still see the aura around the item and detect the object within 30 feet. But I think it's neat that that it's the Barbarian that glows, right? That's flavorful.
Right. It's pretty cool, and it reinforces the whole point of this, which is your soul has been infused with magic of the Feywild. Makes perfect sense. Yep.
Now, here comes the ability that is actually the kind of crux of this path, this primal path, the Wild Surge. So this is a chart of 1d8 things that can happen, and this chart, you roll on it whenever you enter a rage, because wild magic surges out of you. And this is where I think it kind of gets away from the fairy thing, the Feywild thing. I never really think of... Do you think of the Feywild as being chaos magic?
Not necessarily. Definitely magic, definitely strange, but not necessarily chaotic.
Yeah, right, exactly. And this is very much chaos, right? This kind of falls in line with the the chaos magic sorcerer.
Yeah, the wild magic sorcerer. Yeah.
Yeah, the wild magic sorcerer. The wild surges, they're pretty neat. There's 8 of them. They do interesting things, and they're kind of powerful. And at first I was like, I don't know if they're too powerful, but then I was like, well, you can't really control which one you're going to get. So that kind of makes it a little bit better, so you can't plan for things. Mm-hmm. I think it's neat. What do you think?
Personally, as a player and a DM, I don't like things that I think as the Misdirected Mark podcast would say, is it latency? Is that what you talk about?
Yeah, this will create some latency.
It creates latency, right? It takes you away from the actual story that you're telling and delves deeper and deeper into rules where you have to sort things out. And so I understand why people like Wild Magic. And at some points I like it as well, but when it's a constant thing in the game, to me it takes away from the game too much. Now this is less so because instead of rolling on a D100 chart, you're rolling on a D8 chart.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the flavor of it. The mechanics of it, I would want to see and play more before I made a final decision.
Yeah, I think if anybody is going to play this particular path, they're so first off, I think if Wizards is smart and they make this a publishable thing, they should put a PDF somewhere that you can print this off and it's on one page.
Yes. Oh,
so
yeah.
that the Barbarian can actually print it off and put it like next to their character sheet.
Yep.
Because then it becomes less of a latency problem, right? Like it's like I'm raging, I roll, this is what happens.
Yep.
That's so much simpler. And you're right, it's the same thing with the wild sorcerer. Like I always if somebody's playing that, I'm like, let's make a photocopy of that chart so that you have it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is the way to cut down on a lot of the latency there.
Very true.
Then it becomes a lot like a spellcaster. Like it's even a little simpler than a spellcaster because you're just looking at that chart.
Yep.
Let's talk about the actual powers. I'm just going to touch on a couple of them.
Yep.
So the first one is a necrotic energy burst from you, and each creature within 30 feet of you takes 1d10 necrotic damage, and you gain temporary hit points equal to the sum of the necrotic damage dealt to the creatures. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
But then I was like, well, it's only a 1 of 8 chance of that actually happening.
Yeah, but still, that's outrageous, right? And notice it's creatures and not enemies, so you're taking 1d10 from all of your allies as well if they're within 30 feet of you when you rage.
It is also a hindrance to that ability.
Yes. Yeah, so it's chaos.
It is. It's pure chaos.
Yep.
To me, it's probably the most. Maybe not the most. It's one of the most overblown ones, in my opinion. Because it could be really useful. It could also be not useful at all. Like you're fighting one thing, and you just knocked 4 of your allies for 1d10 hit points, right?
Right. Yeah, but if you're in a room with 30 kobolds and they're all swarming around you, that's a lot.
It is a ton, right? Like that is to me that was the other end of the spectrum, right? Like there's it's not that great end of the spectrum. They're like it's super good spectrum, right? And because it's random, you can't really plan for it, which is kind of neat if you ask me.
Yeah.
It's where I was at. I was probably at the same place you were. I'm like, I don't know if this is too good or if it's not good enough or what the deal is with it. But I think I'd like to see it in play, obviously.
Yeah. The problem with it and the problem with any rule you make is if it can be abused, it will be abused. So, what you get then is you get the druid summoning 20 small creatures all around the barbarian who then uses this ability because at higher levels you get to roll twice and take the one you want, right?
No, you get to, as a bonus action, do it every time.
No, at a higher level one of the higher level abilities.
At 14th level,
Right.
you can roll as a bonus action. You can re-roll on the wilds. Oh, re-roll on the wilds, replacing your current effect with a new one.
Okay.
So every round you can spend a bonus action
to
do it again.
Right.
That doesn't mean you're going to get what you want, but you can at least keep taking chances at it.
Yeah. So it's because it is chaotic. It is chaotic. Because it is unpredictable, you can't predict it. You just have to be very careful. That's all.
Yeah, I think because of the unpredictability of it, it's what makes it okay for some of these things. Like, because you never know what's going to happen. Because there's the one that is plant life temporarily grows around you until your rage ends. The ground within 10 feet of you is difficult terrain. That's not that good in certain situations, but it's really good in other certain situations.
Sure.
So really, the playstyle that this thing is pushing is like when you rage, because you still get the stuff that you get when you rage, which is bonuses on strength checks and strength saving throws, resistance to certain kinds of damage.
Yep.
And I think there's a third thing, too, that I'm just forgetting at the moment.
Extra damage, rage damage.
Yes, rage damage. You're still getting all that, plus you're getting this thing. And then I went and I looked at this compared to a lot of the other things that are static, and it seems like these are way more powerful, but because of you never know what you're going to get, it kind of balances out, in my opinion.
Yep. Yeah, I don't necessarily have a problem balance-wise so much as just time-wise. But yeah, I think this will scratch an itch in many players. Those people that love the chaos of the wild sorcerer but don't like playing a magic user, say. Now you can play the barbarian and get that same sort of feel.
Yeah, you can. I also, as a person who would be in a party with this character, would want to stay very far away from them.
Yeah, that's the whole other thing. In many games I've run over the years where there has been this kind of wand of wonder, a wild sorcerer sort of thing, probably half the deaths that have happened at my tables have happened because of something like this, where it's actually a player doing damage to another player rather than me as the DM doing it.
That's yeah, I can totally see that, right? Like
Right.
that makes perfect sense. All right, let's move on to the next ability, which is magic reserves. So this is a fascinating ability. You can touch somebody, and then you roll a d4, and then you can give them a random spell slot back based on the die that you roll.
Yep.
This is weird in some ways because it's the spell slot that you roll. So if they don't have a spell slot open of that level, it doesn't do anything.
True. And at 6th level, when you're casting it, if your party members are also 6th level, the highest spell slot they have is 3rd. So if you roll a 4, it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, and you take damage
Although-
equal to the 5 times the number
Yeah.
you rolled.
And of course, it does say if the creature you touch can't recover a spell slot of that level, either because they're not a spellcaster, I assume, or because they don't have it, they instead gain temporary hit points equal
yeah.
to 5 times the number rolled. So
I
basically,
missed that part.
So basically, you're taking force damage to give them either a spell slot or temporary hit points equal to the damage you're taking.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem bad at all. I actually like that a lot better now.
And
I missed that the first time I read it.
I'm going to stereotype now, though. Most of the people that play barbarians, either as a player type or because they want to play that type of player, aren't big on sharing, right? They're the one that wants to stand in and do 5,000 points of damage in a round, and take very little. So it's not for the player that all I play is the barbarian. They're not likely to appreciate this ability for what it does.
Yeah, I totally see that. I don't necessarily think this barbarian path is aimed at those players.
True. I would agree with that as well.
Yeah, I think this is aimed at players like me who want a little bit of fun with my giant sword. Because I get bored with a giant sword, but this would make me want to play a barbarian because I would be able to use my giant sword and then also do some other things.
Yep.
So the next one is Arcane Rebuke. Yeah, you want to talk about this one? I actually like this one a lot.
Yeah. So if you are targeted as the barbarian by something that forces you to make a saving throw, that creature that forced you to make the saving throw, you can give that target 3d6 force damage as a reaction. So in other words, they cast a spell at you, you have to make a saving throw. Oh, by the way, boom, here's 3d6 force damage as a reaction. I'm fine with it.
I am too. I think you had one note that you
Yeah.
thought only if they fail their saving throw.
Here's my thing, and this is a overall game design thing. At higher levels, it's very hard to keep enemy magic users alive. They generally have fewer hit points, and a lot of times they're dead within the first 2 rounds, at least in my experience. And then you can use magic to keep them alive for a couple extra rounds. But so picking on the creatures that force you to make a saving throw, which is generally spellcasters, I don't like the fact that you're they're getting pounded on a little extra hard right off the bat here. So my thought would be only if the Barbarian fails the saving throw do they take the damage. That way, for me that works flavor-wise because they're pushing magic into your soul. If that magic affects your soul, then boom, there's a reverb that comes back and strikes the caster. That makes sense. I like that.
Yeah, I actually like that a lot more too.
Yeah, and for me, it's just something bad happened to me, so something bad's going to happen to you. If nothing bad happened to me, nothing happens.
Mm-hmm. I think that's pretty solid, actually.
Yeah, not a big deal. Just something I would do.
Yeah, I mean, based on the idea that wizards are hard to keep alive at higher levels, which they are. I mean, usually that is who gets targeted.
Yep.
So I don't know if that's a design problem with the game or if that's actually just a mechanics problem with the game. Like people not designing around wizards very well, or is it just that's just the way the game plays?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both.
Probably, because there are a whole bunch of ways to make wizards being a pain in the butt. I also think that wizards also are always seen as like the largest threat in a fight. So I mean, it's hard unless you can figure out a way to make something equally threatening. Of course, they're going to kill the wizard first.
Yeah, and the only other thing I'm not great with here is like if you get stung by a giant scorpion, right? You have to make a saving throw, but it's just poison damage. So I don't. It loses that connection to that flavor here because it's not magic. That's
Oh, you're right. Yes.
But again, that's not a huge deal, and I think that's sort of me putting my design into something where maybe that's not the intention.
Yeah, I think the intent with this is that you happen to have a bunch of magic crackling within your soul. So it's not about magic affecting you. It's about when something forces you to make a saving throw when you're raging.
Yep.
And I think that's okay. Like anything that makes you make a saving throw while you're raging.
Yeah.
Because
okay.
Think about it. It's cool when somebody comes up and grabs you from behind and you have to make like a strength saving throw or whatever it is.
Right.
I think it's actually just a strength check. I don't know. There's a lot of ones where like you get attacked and then something tries to grapple you and you have to make a saving throw.
Well, or like be knocked prone, right? Make a strength saving throw or be knocked prone. Mm-hmm. So it's okay. It's not as flavorful as I would like, but I can certainly understand the flavor behind it.
Yeah. With that, I really like the idea more that if you fail the saving throw, you do the 3d6 damage back because you've been affected, so then your body lashes back out.
Exactly. Yep.
And we already kind of briefly touched on Chaotic Fury, but at 14th level, and I think this is a really good 14th level ability, you can use your bonus action to roll on the Wild Surge magic table, the Wild Surge table that you have again. So like you can just constantly be rolling up a new Wild Surge every turn, although it's random, so have fun with that.
Yep.
Can I mention one more off the Wild Surge table because
Yes.
I think it's really fun and it's like I feel like I wonder if Teos Abadiah wrote this.
I was wondering if you were going to mention this.
Yeah. So the third one is you conjure 1d4 intangible spirits that look like flumps in unoccupied spaces within 30 feet of you. Each spirit immediately flies 30 feet in a random direction. At the end of your turn, all spirits explode, and each creature within 5 feet of one or more of them must succeed on a dexterity saving throw or take 2d8 force damage. Mm-hmm. Boy, that is a super random situation, too.
Yeah, think of all the randomness that goes into that, right? First, it's the random, do I roll a 3? Yes, okay. Now roll a d4 to see how many spirits there are. Now figure out randomly in what unoccupied spaces within 30 feet they are. Then again, randomly figure out which direction that they fly in for 30 feet.
Yep.
Right? Oh, it's just, yeah.
I mean, on the bright side, it's unoccupied spaces within 30 feet. So that's not random. You actually pick. Because it doesn't say random on that one.
Yeah,
So
and that's another thing that I was going to mention about all of this was there's a lot of things here where you're not sure if it's random or if you pick.
Yeah, I mean, the text could be cleaned up a little bit to make it easier to read,
Right.
but like that one is too complicated.
Yeah.
There's too many steps to the end of it.
Right.
So that once again lays into your latency problem.
Yeah.
Like The necrotic one is simple enough. It's just roll a d10 and then take some damage and add it to yourself.
Yeah.
There's one that's you teleport 20 feet to an unoccupied space you can see until your raid ends. You can activate this effect on each of your turns as a bonus action, so you can teleport each round for 20 feet as a bonus action.
That's pretty cool.
That one's simple, right? Like, it's easy to understand.
Yeah, and even number 7, which is a long entry, is pretty cool, and it's easy.
Yes, it's just your weapon becomes, you deal psychic damage.
And you can throw it.
You can throw it.
Yeah.
And it'll come back
And
to
it comes back, so that's cool.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Also, number 8, it's a beam of brilliant light lances towards from your chest in a 60-foot line, and then anybody in it takes makes a Constitution saving throw, takes 2d8 damage, radiant damage, and is blinded until the start of your next turn. Like, it's simple, right?
Yep.
All right, so that's the Path of the Wild Soul. I think it's pretty good. I think it just needs a little touching up here and there.
Yeah. I'm not a big Barbarian player, but I would be interested in running a game with someone playing this just to see how it happened.
Yeah, me too. All right, let's talk about the Way of the Astral Self. Mm-hmm. So, this is a monk path. To be fair to everybody out there, I'm not a huge monk fan anyway in D&D. I think it kind of drives me crazy a lot of the time. But that's because most of the time I'm running games that tend to have a medieval or Victorian bent to them, and they don't fit in the settings and situations that I'm usually setting up. Mm-hmm. So monks are fine, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with monks. When I read this one, I'm like, if you know what Shonen Jump is, and if you know what, and you're an anime fan, I'm like, this is straight up a Shonen Jump anime manga show or book that I haven't seen yet.
Okay, and now I'm going to give my little take on it.
Sure.
So this monk, the conceit of this monk is your key is actually connected to an astral self, which is a translucent embodiment of you. So somewhere on the astral plane, say, there is a being that is you, and you sort of share this key that is so prevalent in your life. And so what happens is you use key points to bring pieces of that astral self to you and then use them, and they give you abilities. And, as I'm reading this, I'm like, oh, that sounds familiar. And then I realized that I've worked on 2 products that are very similar to this. For Kobold Press, I worked on the Dragon Magic book, and I created an arcane tradition called Dragon Mage, where the wizard uses spell slots to bring aspects of dragons to themselves. So you kind of wear like a dragon mask, and that gives you a bite and abilities, things like the way you can see changes. I also worked on, in our adventure Return of the Lizard King, Chris, I created a Circle of Reaping for Death Druids.
I remember.
Which is pretty much the same thing. You use spell slots to bring to yourself aspects of death. So,
yeah, a lot of Grim Reaper aspects.
Grim Reaper, really, right. So there's the Death Mask, and there's the Death Cloak, and there's the Death Scythe, and there's the Pale Horse. All of these things you can bring, and they give you special abilities that last for a certain amount of time when you burn spell slots. So this is right in that same wheelhouse. So in that sense, I love this conceit because it's something that I've told myself I'm going to do one for every spellcasting class. I haven't gotten to that point yet, but this is bringing it to the monk class powered by key points.
So in my Shonen Jump manga that doesn't exist, the Dragon Mage and the Death Druid are like specific characters, right?
Right.
But the general conceit of the world would be this: like, people can use their willpower to basically summon aspects of their power from another dimension to give them, abilities beyond the mortal ken.
Yeah.
Which is the most anime thing I've heard in a very long time.
Right. And the reason I like this is because I as a player don't like to play full spellcasters. I don't mind like bards maybe because you do other things other than just cast spells, but like wizards and and even clerics. I'm not a huge fan because it's just like cast a spell, cast a spell, cast a spell, cast a spell, and I want a little variance. So this, for me, is a way to play spellcasters, but in a different way, because you're not using your spell slots to cast spells. You're using them to, create aspects. And this is kind of what they're doing here with the druid. So with the monk. So rather than using your key points and just doing the flurry of blows, use a key point, flurry of blows, use a key point. It's giving you other options to play with, sort of.
So let's actually talk about what you do.
Yep.
So the what you're doing is summoning, like we said, parts of your astral self to kind of hover around you as like these translucent pieces. It starts with the arms, and then eventually you'll get a visage, so a helmet or a face piece. And then you will be able to do a thing that makes you even better with both of those things at the same time. And then you'll get to eventually invoke the whole self, the whole astral self around you.
Yep.
Let's talk about how that works mechanically now. By the way, the reason I say this is the most anime thing ever is because you can describe what these things look like. So if you've ever watched a shonen anime or read a shonen jump manga, like, this is right in the wheelhouse of some of those kinds of things. Like, you use your willpower to summon stuff around you that makes you more powerful. So let's talk about the arms of the astral self. So for 2 key points, you get to summon these translucent arms that hover above your shoulders a little bit, and then you can replace your strength with your wisdom for ability checks and saving throws. Mm-hmm. For strength ability checks and saving throws. So, normally you could use dexterity, too, at this point. Because that's how monks work.
No, this is just ability checks and saving throws, not attack rolls.
Not attack rolls. But if I remember correctly, doesn't the monk get to use? Is the monk just for strength for attack rolls? Is that what that is?
No, for attack rolls they can use strength or dex for their monk weapons. But,
Okay.
But this is if you need to knock a door down. And make a strength check, or if you're going to be tripped and need a strength saving throw, you can replace your wisdom for strength.
This also lets you use wisdom instead of strength for attacks too.
Right.
So this makes wisdom the key ability for monks if you use this path.
Right. As long as you use these 2 key points, and the important thing is you get to use these benefits for 10 minutes. This isn't just like one attack. This hangs in there for a while.
Which, by the way, also very anime.
Yep.
Putting a timer on it, just throwing it out there. Like whoever wrote this one up was a fan. I'm pretty sure of anime. If they weren't, I'm don't know where they got this idea from.
Right.
It's really good. So the other thing is you get an extra attack when you use your arms for the attack action.
Yep.
And it doesn't cost you a key point, which
Right.
gets you around the flurry of blows thing.
Yep.
Although you get 1 less attack than the flurry of blows.
Right, so you would take your normal attack, and then you would get an extra attack if you have these arms of the astral self going.
Yeah, if you spend your bonus action to do it, because you need a bonus action for flurry of blows too, but you have to spend a key point.
Yep.
I was double checking. By the way, D&D Beyond is wonderful for stuff like that.
Yes,
Just throwing
it
it
is.
out there.
Yes, it is.
So that's neat. I really like it. Like you can have the 2 examples they have is like you have the muscled arms of a knight, or like the mechanical arms of a Modron.
Yeah.
Like your spirit visage could be a Modron. That would be interesting.
That would be. So the next ability is Visage of the Astral Self. So when you put this visage on, you also get the arms, and you get advantage on insight and intimidation checks, and you can see in both magical and non-magical darkness for 120 feet.
You don't have to actually summon the arms with the visage of the astral self.
Okay.
Yeah, you can spend 1 key point as a bonus action or as part of summoning your astral arms. You have the choice.
Okay,
'Cause
yes.
sometimes you might just want the visage.
True. Yeah. So
Because it costs less, that's why.
right. So if you use the 2, you get the astral arms at 6th level free, basically, along with the visage. Or if you just need to see in the dark, or if you just need that advantage to intimidate someone, you can just spend 1 key point.
It's cumulative. Like, you have to spend 2 to arms.
Right.
You have to spend 1 for the visage, but you can spend the 3 points to get them both in the same action.
I don't think so.
On
On your turn,
you can spend 1 key point as a bonus action, or as part of your astral arms.
Right, or as part of summoning your astral arms. So you can spend 1 key point as a bonus action, or as part of summoning your astral arms, you summon this visage.
You're right. You're right because of where the commas are.
Right.
Hey everybody, I confused that because of the way that it was written. Although it's written perfectly fine, so don't. That's not the text's fault. That's my fault.
Now it is a little confusing, and it will need to be spelled out explicitly. But yeah, at 6th
Yes.
level, if you spend those 2 key points to bring your arms, you get the
You can bring your
visage.
helm.
Yeah,
Yep.
you get the visage free. So yeah, and I'm fine with that. That's cool
Yeah, I agree.
because this isn't something you're attacking with per se. It's utility wise, it's cool. For insight, for intimidation, getting advantage, or for seeing in the dark, a little extra. That's
By the way, the dark and stormy night effect in the background is brought to you by Mother Nature.
getting some thunder, are you?
Oh man, there's a whole lot of rain coming down right now.
Nice. All right, so that was 6th level.
Uh-huh.
At scrolling,
Oh, we're talking about awakening of the astral self.
yep, at 11th
So,
level.
so that just makes your visage and your arms better. So you can do a bunch of things. You can deflect acid, cold, fire, lightning, or force damage like you might a missile. That's neat. Like you can just deflect it like anybody that shoots an acid arrow at you. You can just like knock it out of the way with your astral arms.
Right.
Your astral arms will now deal extra damage, and you can message. You have like a message-like ability with one nearby creature, or you can get really loud because of your visage. It'll let you project loudly.
Yep, amplify your voice to all creatures within 600 feet.
That's pretty. Once again, this is so anime. I don't even know what to say.
And finally, at 17th level, you get the complete astral self. You get a +2 to your armor class. Your extra attack that you get with your arms, you can now get 3 extra attacks with that. And this is the cool one. You can regain key points when nearby creatures are reduced to 0 hit points. And you don't just get 1 key point back. You get key points back equal to your wisdom modifier, which at 17th level is probably pretty high.
Should be +5 at that point.
Yeah, probably +5. So
If you're playing this path, it should be +5 or +6 or +7 or whatever it is, right?
yep. So if you're, and that it's creature, not enemy. So if one of your allies falls, 5 key points back. If if you're fighting 6 different creatures, that's 30 key points back by the end of the combat, assuming you win.
Yeah. The neat thing about that is if you're going to hit up your astral self, you can pretty much just continually be using your astral self as long as you keep knocking people down.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which is an interesting thing because there's not very much you can use key on that you would want to at that point. I don't think.
Well, it depends. It depends on what. Well, that's true because I was thinking, well, you could do all these other things, but those are all
Bonus actions.
Well, no, but they're all different archetypes of the monk, and you can't take those if you're taking this.
Yeah, the only I went and looked at the monk thing because I wanted to see what would be the use of that. So the extra attack feature with your astral barrage is a bonus action.
Right.
Flurry of blows is a bonus action. The taking the dodge action or the dash action, which is monk base, is also a bonus action. The only key ability I think that is not a bonus action is that you can spend a key point to reroll a saving throw. So that's useful.
Is stunning fist?
I think isn't that part of a
Yeah, I can't.
I'll let you know in a second. I'm looking at the monk class right now in D&D Beyond. I'm pretty sure Stunning Fist was part of an ability path, right? No, Stunning Strike is 5th level.
Yeah.
Stunning Strike. You can spend a key point to attempt a Stunning Strike, so that you can use it for that too.
Right, which at that point you would be doing pretty much every time you attacked.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, yeah.
Unless you're trying to save up your points,
So like any other playtest class, I would want to see it in action before I made a final verdict. But I really like the flavor of this, just because of who I am as a player and as a DM and as a designer, and I don't see it as being too horribly overpowered compared to any of the other monk ways. So we'll see.
Really, I just want this particular tradition, the Way of the Astral Self, to have a bunch of options for like the fists, the helmet, and the body, and then like a chart of like 20 of them for each one, like another like little add-on that you can pick, so that when you pick your arms, like you get this little extra benefit that goes along with your arm type, and then of course like that proceeds forward, and then make it like sort of a rock paper scissors. How some arms are better, some spirit visages are better against other spirit or astral cells are better against other astral cells, because then you have your anime game in D&D. Like
you and your anime game.
I love manga, and I love shonen anime, so like things like One Piece and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood and things like that, and that kind of storytelling and the way that the fights go on are perfect for something like this. But then you need really much better like one-on-one dueling rules, because one-on-one fights in D&D are boring. Just saying.
It's true.
Okay, that's it. I'm done.
No, so let us know what you think. We have forums now.
We do. You should come to the forums.
Anybody listening can go to our forums. Chris, where are those forums?
Forums.misdirectedmark.com.
There you go. And you can go there and you can tell us your thoughts on these two Unearthed Arcana products.
We also have an upcoming giveaway for that. The first 100 people that come to our forums, we're going to give one of them a bag Cthulhu and some dice.
Sweet.
So we will mail you a dice bag with some dice inside of it, and it looks like a little Cthulhu bag. It's great.
Awesome.
So come join the forums. Leave a post, introduce yourself, so that I know that you're there. Let's talk about D&D at PAX West.
Oh, yes. Real quick. When this show drops, it'll probably be very close to PAX West. And if you are going to be at PAX West, there are some D&D things happening. On Friday night, there's Acquisitions Incorporated Live. That's the big show. Friday afternoon, from 3 to 4, there is The Tale of the Years, Baldur's Gate, The Hells and Beyond, where you can learn all about those topics, which are highlighted in the next D&D product, which is Baldur's Gate, Descent into Avernus. Friday afternoon, right after that seminar, is a panel that I will be on called From Green Flame to Phasers, Creating in Another's World, where a bunch of us, a panel of several people, including Teo Sabadia and Scott Fitzgerald Gray, will talk about not just the Acquisitions Incorporated book, but any sort of game creation where you're using other people's IP. What are some of the pitfalls, and what are some of the challenges, what are some of the joys, and then you can ask your questions from all of us who have worked on various things, from D&D to Star Trek to a bunch of things. If you want to hear more about the official Acquisitions Incorporated book, there is the AI, the official book panel, Saturday at 2:30. And there, if you go to the Wizards website and check out their D&D at PAX West link, you will also see a ton of other panels and live plays. There's gaming for charity. There's autograph sessions. There is the High Rollers, Queer Quests by Battles and Terrific Transformations, talking about video game tabletops in terms of gender and another sexuality. There's Tabletop Meeting Digital, Game Design Breakdown, you name it, there is a panel that's discussing it.
So many things.
All the things.
I got one more announcement.
Yes.
So by the time you hear this, I imagine that the Streets of Avalon will be available for purchase on Drive-Thru-RPG, because we fulfilled pretty much everything for the base game.
Yes.
The boxes are out. There's actually an unboxing video that somebody put together, Joe Schwick, one of our backers. And the books have all been sent to where the coupons have all been sent where they need to be sent to.
Yep.
So
yeah. In case you don't know, The Streets of Avalon is a book that we did with Encoded Designs. Brett, I can't pronounce his last name, so I'll say Brett B.
Yep.
Was the main designer, and then Encoded Designs did the rest of the development, production, and so on. So it is a 5th edition compatible product that has a Lankmar feel, I would say, right? Fafhrd
Yes.
the Green Mouser, one big...
Green.
Gray. Gray. Did I say Green Mouser?
Yeah.
I've got green flame stuck in my head. Fafhrd the Grey Mouser, one big city called Avalon, and all of the adventures and misadventures that take place there.
Yeah, it's very it's kind of dark and grim and gritty.
Mhm.
So if you like Lankmar, it's very sword and sorcery.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to our topic for the day. So, Acquisitions Incorporated, Part 1. So we're going to talk about Chapter 1, which covers some of the high-level concepts of an Acquisitions Incorporated campaign. Then it covers the history of AI as an organization, giving a very trimmed-down version of the games they've played over the years. And then there's a quick franchise fast generator for people who, which they call lazy in the book, because this book is hilarious. I just want to throw it out there.
It is something.
It is something. It's pretty funny. I read it. I giggled a bunch of times the first chapter.
Yeah, I've been rereading it, or some parts that I didn't work on reading it for the first time, and I was just like, "This is the funniest thing I've read in a while."
So Sean, what would you say is Acquisitions Incorporated?
It is D&D first and foremost. It brings to D&D a bit of the comical but dark corporate structure to D&D. So if you think of The Office, or if you think of what's the I need you to help me on this, Chris.
Sure.
There is a Cthulhu-ish sort of
Oh, The Laundry.
The Laundry, yes, that where it's The Office meets Cthulhu.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Also, if you're into British comedies, the IT Crowd would probably fit into this too.
Sure. So it brings to D&D this layer of corporate intrigue and satire that I think fits well in today's modern world.
I agree. It's all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Just if you mash those two things together, that's what this book is all about.
Right. Now, the important thing to note is even if you're not into the whole office comedy part of it, there is still a deep and rich story that underlies the Acquisitions Incorporated world, and you can forget the satire and forget the comedy, and you can use it as a totally legitimate base fantasy world, and it even gets into some pretty grim places, and you can make it, instead of dark comedy, just dark.
Yeah, you can go that way with it for sure. I just think that the comedic aspect comes from the disjointed idea between the office side of things and the fantasy side of things.
Right. The way I like to describe it is just like your D&D game at home where you have all sorts of off-topic jokes, only those off-topic jokes are part of the game. Right?
Yeah.
You bring it in and you lean into it rather than, saying these offhand remarks and then getting on with the regular swinging of the sword.
Yeah. There's a thing that I love about humor in storytelling. If the humor is actually part of the story, it's funnier to me.
Exactly.
Right? And this takes the humor and puts it of like modern day office politics and things like that and puts it right inside the story.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll actually have to work a lot less hard if I'm running an Acquisitions Incorporated game to make the humor all make sense, because that matters to me personally. It doesn't matter to everybody. It matters to me, though.
Yeah. And my own home game group very much are... They're very much like the Acquisitions Incorporated crew because they're hilarious, they're funny, but they make that funny part of the game rather than just being outside the game.
Yeah, that sounds like a wonderful game to play in.
Yeah. So that's why this project was so cool for me.
Yeah. So when I was reading this first chapter, the book asks the reader to think about a couple of things. It asks the reader to think about the big bads of your game as CEOs of megacorporations, running their giant webs and networks of people for some financial or whatever end, right? Like they usually money, usually control, because that's usually what megacorporations are all about. And that really fits pretty well for a big bad, even in D&D, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, D&D already has this, right? The Xanathar, right? He is a big bad evil dude, or beholder. At the center of a guild, right?
A megacorporation.
A megacorporation. A dragon in her lair with all these kobold servants, right? She is the CEO of her organization. Her kobolds are out there working to bring her more gold. If she needs to get involved, she does, but for the most part, she would rather sit at the center of her company and delegate the responsibilities and chill in her big pile of gold.
Yeah, I mean, a bunch of Illithids just trying to, invade the prime material plane and, bring madness to people is just a marketing campaign.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, so all of these things are there. And they just need that one little tweak to take them from their high fantasy incarnation to this business model incarnation.
Yeah. And then it also asks us to think of adventuring parties as limited liability corporations, which might be the best description for an adventuring party I've ever heard.
Yeah. Yes. Because, yes, we just burned down the orphanage, but really, what can you do?
Yeah. Also, we're going to send you into this tomb that, has like a 5% survival rate.
Yep.
But there's a lot of money in there.
Yeah.
So, high risk, high reward, right?
Exactly. The junk bond market.
The junk bond market. All right. Then it also goes on to say that hirelings, sidekicks, apprentices, and other paid workers are back in this book, and they are given some treatment so that they can be utilized for story and for comedic effect.
Yeah. So it's funny because back in the AD&D first edition days, it would take most groups a long time to level. So if you got to 10th or 11th level, you might play, if you play once a week, you might play for a couple of months before you gain a level. And sometimes you'd get tired, but tired of the character, tired of where you were. You just needed a little break. And many times, if you followed the rules, you had these hirelings and these servants. What you would do is then make first-level versions of characters. They became your hirelings, and they went off on their own little adventures. And you could play that for a week or two, and then go back to your main characters. You could do this here. Whether you don't have to make them actual characters, but they have their own stories and they're working for you. So you could make that a side quest. You could spend an evening doing that rather than playing with your own characters.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like a perfect way to get a break if you're the kind of people that play weekly, right? Mm-hmm. And also still keep your campaign going and playing the same world, so it's not anything really super different.
Right.
And you still get that experience that you want, and you get to further your story along from a different point of view.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Okay, so that's really what the first chapter is all about, kind of talking about that. Then they go into the history, right? And I wanted to read this part of the text to show off the kind of storylines that can occur in an Acquisitions Incorporated game. Is that okay, Sean? Can
Yes,
I do that?
Absolutely.
All right. So Omen's own sister, Portentia, so Omen is the person who started Acquisitions Incorporated. Portentia now runs and serves a competing company called Dran Enterprises, because Omen Dran's his name. Mm-hmm. Originally founded by what turned out to be a false version of Omen's lost sister, Auspicia, Dran Enterprises has long sought to execute a hostile takeover of Acquisitions Incorporated. All such efforts have been skillfully rebuffed, of course, with Acquisitions Incorporated embracing its place as an always independent and clearly superior operation. Mm-hmm. I mean, if that doesn't sort of like... that doesn't sound like a D&D storyline. That sounds like a corporate espionage storyline, right?
Yep.
But yet it happens in this game.
And so that's what's cool about this is if you're into that, if you're into the overstory of Acquisitions Incorporated with Omen and his family, you can, as the DM, get the players involved directly in that. If that's not something that your players or you are interested in, then you can just go off and you can do your own thing. You don't have to interact specifically with Acquisitions Incorporated home office at all,
mm-hmm.
and still do your own thing. So there's a wide array of stories that you can tell, whether it's tapping into this 10-year-long saga of Acquisitions Incorporated and Omen Dran, or just do your own thing, several 100,000 miles away.
So the other thing I wanted to mention. So I just mentioned Sean's absolutely right, but the the point is like these are very different kinds of stories that you can tell with this because of the setup, right?
Right.
There's also the D&D stuff and kind of the mesh of that. So like there's a moment they're talking about cloning Jim Darkmagic. Jim Darkmagic is a longtime employee and one of the original characters of Acquisitions Incorporated.
Yep.
He was cloned to get around the death curse because when the death curse was a thing, Jim was dying because Jim may have died at a previous time.
Yep.
And then the clone was later sold to a devil for profit and other things. Because, why not? You have a resource, you might as well sell it, right?
Right. Yeah, so it's
Sorry.
It's when I've gone back and I've listened to the original podcasts from 2009, all the way up through present, when I was working on the book, and it's so much. This is your D&D game, right? This is just like your D&D game, but the brilliance of it is basically Tycho Brahe, Jerry, who plays Omendron, is just this brilliant storyteller, and I can just listen to him talk and start laughing. Just the way he delivers even normal lines is hilarious. And so, the way that they took these jokes that just started with, oh look, we're an adventuring company. Oh, we're a company. From that original moment, and the way that they've intertwined a regular D&D game with this business is brilliant. And so, lean into that and use the work that they've done already to inspire your own game. So, maybe hey, they cloned Jim Darkmagic. They didn't need the clone, so he sold it. Maybe he clones all his employees, and now there's a clone of you running around. Or
I feel like they probably only clone their high level employees just to have a backup, just in case.
But as the DM, you can use any of this.
That's true.
That's my point. Is don't just use it as that's their story. It's your story now. When you decide to run an AI themed game, use all of that's come before. If your players are fans of Acquisitions Incorporated, they'll be delighted because they get the reference. And if they're not, it's great story.
Yeah, and the jokes are there too to be had. Like I usually have a hard time putting comedy into games, like and making it make sense. But this does it for you in a lot of ways. It helps set it up.
Right. So use the comedy, use the brilliant backstory in your own game if it works for you. Don't be afraid to borrow heavily.
Yeah. Last thing, the chapter finishes with a fast franchise generator, which covers a franchise logo and livery. For example, 3 werewolves howling at the moon. Headquarters locations, like an early model airship, very early. The balloon is mostly patches at this point. A motley assortment of ship sails, cloaks, and animal skins. That would be a fun place to have a headquarters, right? HQ quirks. I mean, as if the balloon thing wasn't, already quirky. Every Friday, the color of the walls changes to different festive themes. That's pretty fun. Memorable major domos. For instance, a druid that keeps an open door policy for any and all animals seeking shelter. The cleaning policy is less rigorous. Well then. And reliable connections. So Kim the Kid, the best fence in town.
Yep.
So things like that. I also really like G. The only thing known about this information broker is the dead drop point where they exchange messages, and that they're never wrong. They're just called G. So that's a way to quickly generate your franchise, or at least the outside pieces of your franchise.
Right. And I just want to mention quickly, the whole idea of a franchise is just like McDonald's, right? You have your home office. And when you decide to open a franchise, you get things from the home office that help you, and in return, you give a small amount of your profit, or a large amount, depending, back to the home company. And that is a business thing, but it's very much a useful D&D tool as well, because now you have powerful people that can give your players help if they need it. But there's also that conflict because they are more powerful and they do, quote unquote, own a share of what you're doing. So, it's a tool for storytelling. It's a tool for delivering mechanical benefits if you so choose.
Yep.
Hey, here's a magic item you need. You can borrow it. Make sure you give it back in one piece. Oh, whoops, you broke it while you were using it. What are we going to do about that? There's story, there's mechanics, all of it fits beautifully into this sort of franchise system.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about all of that starting next week with Chapter 2, Growing Your Franchise.
There
That
you
might
go.
take us a couple weeks to get through. There's a lot of stuff in there.
There is stuff.
So we'll start there. We'll see how far we get. We might even trim down our announcements section, but we really wanted to get into that Barbarian and Monk. They're always interesting and fascinating. So, but next week, Chapter 2, Growing Your Franchise.
All right.
All right, well, let's do some Patreon shout-outs now. Brandon Barnes, the old school DM Randy Farmer, the Mad Wizard Merwin, who patrons us, even though I don't know why you do. But thank you, Sean.
Sure.
Troy Sandlin, Will Doyle, Zach Goins, Chris Constantine, Cindy Moore, Eric Mengi, Eric Simon, Miko Froelich, Andrew Dempsey, V. Waxberg, Brett, Chris Steele, I can't do it as well as Phil can, Curtis Y. Takahashi, Daniel Thomas, Dennis Malloy, J. David Chrisman, J.T. Evans, Jem Pixelscapes Gagney, Joseph Peralta, Mike Amer, Ninjabi, The Rainmaker, Richard Drew Wayne, and Richard Wyatt. Oh, there's a few more. Roy McLeod, Savannah Sizer, Scott Ryder, and Sean P. Kelly. And speaking of patrons, if you would like to be a patron of Down with D&D, you can click on the link to our Patreon page. It's right there on the website. Or you can just go to Patreon and look up Misdirected Mark. And for $2 a month, you can get yourself a shout-out.
Or for $4 a month, you not only get a shout-out, but you also get to see our pre-production show notes and access to our Slack room, the Misdirected Mark Slack room, where you can chat with us about anything you so choose.
Even outside of that, just go to the forums. Just throwing it out there, right?
Yeah.
Like, go to the forums, you can talk to us, and you don't have to be a patron to do that.
It's true.
And we'll talk to you. If you can't help us monetarily, but you want to give us a boost, you can do so with an Apple Podcast review.
You know what I'm going to say. Those help even if you're not listening via Apple Podcast. So help rate and rank our show, make us more visible, and let us know how we're doing.
Yeah, and share when you see us on Facebook or on Twitter. We'd greatly appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Sean, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Sean Merwin, and now you can find me on the forums.
Yeah, you can hit me up at the Light 101, or you can go and hit me up at Misdirected Mark on Twitter. That's the network and the show's Twitter. We only have the one these days. You can also just go to the website, aside from the forums, where you can catch other great shows such as this one, Bone, Stone, and Obsidian. So Wayne and Robert, they take a monthly deep dive into the Dark Sun setting and discuss it across all editions of D&D. And fascinating, the last episode that they did was all about how they would do Dark Sun and 5th edition D&D.
Mm-hmm. Down with D&D is a Misdirected Mark production, the media arm of Encoded Designs.
So, Mr. Mad Wizard Merwin, what are we going to do now?
We are going to go kill some monsters.
And then sell the stuff and give the profits to our corporation, right?
Absolutely.
Get down with D&D. Yeah, you know me. Get down with D&D. Yeah, you know me. Get down with D&D. Yeah, you know me. Who's down with D&D? You down with D&D? Yeah, you know me. You down with D&D? Yeah, you know me. I'm down with D&D. Yeah, you know me. Who's down with D&D?